Winter of 1988, Saitama was wrapped in a cold embrace. During the day, the thin sunlight, like a silk cloth, stretched over the remaining red maple trees. But when the sun set, the entire city was submerged in a heavy stillness. The narrow alleys became dark labyrinths, where the rare shadows of people hurried as if they were afraid of something following them. In a corner of Misato town, a story was about to unfold, a story that years later, when mentioned, people would lower their voices as if afraid of disturbing the soul of the deceased. It was not just a case, it was a scar that would never heal for an entire community. Detective Shigeru Takahashi of the 1st Investigation Division still remembers the day the name Junko Furuta first appeared before him. It was just a dry note in a file. Female, 17 years old, missing since late November 1988. At that time, no one on the team could have imagined that behind those few concise words was a deep abyss of crime, and it was that very abyss that would drag him into long, sleepless nights, where the darkness of man was colder than the Saitama winter. 8:20 p.m. Junko Furuta left her part-time job, her eyes bright and her face flushed from the cold wind. She cycled through the dark streets, hearing only the gentle whir of the bike chain blending with her steady heartbeat. Saitama at this time was strangely quiet, as if the city was holding its breath. Suddenly, a strong force from behind knocked both her and her bike onto the road. The shock blurred everything around her. When she looked up, she saw a young man approaching Hiroshi Miyano. His voice was low and soft, with a worried tone, but his eyes held something cold and slippery, like a hidden knife under his sleeve. He offered to take her home, his smile like a ticket to safety in the dark night. But a few streets later, Miyano turned into a dead-end alley. The mask of concern fell away, revealing his true face, not just a pervert, but the leader of a gang of delinquent youths who preyed on the weak. From the moment his hand tightened around Junko's arm, the path home disappeared. Before her now was only a trail leading down into a deep abyss, a place where light would never reach. The two-story house of the Shinji Minato family stood silently in the neighborhood, like any other house, a clean tile roof, slightly ajar windows, as gentle as a painting of a small Japanese town. But inside, it was not a home. It was a prison without bars, where all escape routes had been blocked before Junko even set foot in it. Her freedom was taken away along with her clothes, and gradually, her faith in humanity was also eroded. During the day, loud music and obscene laughter echoed, like a thin layer of paint hiding the smell of decay that was spreading throughout the house. At night, the space became thick with silence, with only footsteps, slamming doors, and the cold sounds of violence seeping into her bones. What made the darkness here even thicker was the presence and the silent complicity. Downstairs, Shinji's parents and older brother knew everything. They knew the screams caught in her throat. They knew of the wounds that would never heal. But they chose to turn away, as if a small bird was locked in an iron cage, left for wild beasts to tear at every feather and drop of blood. The days of captivity passed like an endless nightmare. Each morning, Junko woke up to the dull ache in her body and the numbness in her soul. But the next day was always worse than the day before, as if the youths saw her suffering as a form of entertainment that needed to be upgraded daily. The beatings, the tortures, the mocking laughter, all blended into a distorted symphony where each note was the sound of breaking bones, moans, and a shattered heart. There was no longer a boundary between day and night, only a gloomy current, pulling her deeper into the abyss. At times, Junko tried to look one of them straight in the eye, hoping to find a remnant of humanity. But what met her was a pair of cold, empty pupils like the concrete walls around her. Worse, those eyes no longer saw her as a human being, but only as a living toy for them to experiment with their cruelest ideas. Downstairs, the Minato family went on with their lives as usual. The sound of the TV, the clinking of dishes, the faint laughter, all blended into the background, like an indifferent soundtrack to the tragedy unfolding right above their heads. Junko didn't know how long she had been there. She only knew that whenever she closed her eyes, she no longer dreamed of freedom, she only wished to disappear, so she wouldn't have to endure another day. No one knows exactly how much pain the human body can endure before it collapses. For Junko, the answer came sooner than anyone else. Her body was now just a collection of bruises, bleeding wounds, and burns. The hands that were once skilled at folding paper now trembled so much she couldn't even hold a glass of water. Every step was a torment. But the thing that was destroyed the fastest was the inside. Fear had turned into numbness, then gradually into an empty void. At first, Junko would still cry, beg, and tremble at a punch or the sound of a lighter. Now, when someone's hand pulled her hair or a kick hit her ribs, she would just slightly tilt her head, like a broken doll that had grown used to the cruel hands of its player. The youths, the more they realized her silence, the more they tried to break it. They wanted to hear screams, to see panicked eyes. And to do that, they were willing to cross boundaries that even they had never dared to step over. Downstairs, the Minato family remained calm. The mother washed dishes, the father read the newspaper, the TV murmured news about missing persons. All they had to do was look up the stairs, and they would see Junko's eyes like a candle about to go out, but they never looked. That night, as Junko lay curled in a corner of the room, she realized something terrifying. She was no longer afraid of death. The only thing she feared was having to wake up tomorrow. The last days of December, Saitama was submerged in bitter cold. Snow fell sparsely outside the window, but in the room on the second floor, the cold could not soothe the searing heat of the new wounds. Junko lay there, her body like a map of pain, each patch of skin a mark of violence, each breath a battle. They no longer saw her as a human. To them, Junko was just a blank canvas to be drawn on with cruel experiments. Boiling water, sharp objects, fire, and other tortures that only a twisted mind could devise. They destroyed her not only with force, but with time each hour, each day eroding, forcing her to fall to the bottom of an abyss where all feeling was crushed. Loud music still played, as if to mock the life that was fading away. Each time Junko collapsed, a brutal hand would pull her up, not to save her, but to ensure the nightmare had not ended. Old wounds were torn open before they could heal, and new pain piled on. Downstairs, the smell of stew from the kitchen drifted up, mingling with the smell of blood and strong antiseptic on the second floor. The Minato family still ate dinner, still talked, as if the vague noises from upstairs were just the sound of the wind seeping through the roof. In a rare moment when they left the room, Junko looked out the window. Snow was falling, blindingly white. She wanted to reach out and catch a snowflake, to feel that pure cold, but her hands no longer obeyed. At that moment, she understood that the world outside had left her forever. January 4, 1989. Saitama was submerged in a thick night. Wind howled through the narrow alleys, carrying a cold that penetrated every crack in the doors. In the room on the second floor of the Minato house, Junko Furuta lay curled up like a dry leaf. Her body could no longer distinguish between pain and numbness. It was all just a hazy fog of sensation. They had crossed all boundaries long ago. But tonight, the cruelty reached another form: absolute indifference. Each punch, each kick, each sound of the lighter happened like a familiar ritual, with no reason, no emotion. They just did it, as if they had forgotten that the thing in front of them was once a human being. Junko didn't cry anymore. She didn't beg. Her eyes were slightly open, looking into the void, where imaginary snowflakes still fell, pure white and peaceful. In that moment, she felt herself leaving the room, leaving the sickening laughter, leaving the pain. When her last breath escaped, it was so light that no one in the room noticed. Only an unusual silence enveloped the space, a silence that, if anyone was observant, they would understand that a part of the darkness had just swallowed a soul. But here, no one was observant. Downstairs, the clinking of dishes could be heard. Dinner continued. The news on the TV spoke of a new future for 1989. And on the second floor, Junko Furuta had passed into another world, where there was no more violence, no more fear. January 23, 1989. A steel oil drum was left in a wasteland by the Edo River in Misato. The sanitation worker thought it was just industrial waste, but when the lid of the drum popped open, a burnt, putrid smell washed over him like a toxic wave. Inside, charcoal and bone fragments, and something that made him tremble and run. A few charred locks of hair, clumped together in patches. An urgent notification was immediately sent to the 1st Investigation Division. Detective Shigeru Takahashi was the first to approach the scene. He stood before the drum, the cold of winter unable to mask the smell of smoke that still clung to the air. When the first bone fragment was lifted, he knew this case would haunt him for the rest of his life. Forensic analysis confirmed it was Junko Furuta, the 17-year-old girl who had disappeared since late November. But the investigation file quickly went far beyond a normal murder. The details collected from the testimonies, from the evidence, from the two-story house in Minato itself were like needles piercing Takahashi's mind. He couldn't understand how a quiet street, a normal family, could contain a living nightmare. Nor could he understand why neighbors, friends, and even the culprit's parents could remain silent for 44 days. That night, as he wrote the report, Takahashi paused at the last line. He had seen countless murders, but this was the first time he couldn't find a single word to describe it. There was only one phrase he crossed out and rewrote many times. The shadows of Saitama. Autumn of 1990. The Tokyo courtroom was packed with reporters and curious citizens. Inside, the four perpetrators of Junko Furuta's death sat in the defendants' chairs, hands in their pockets, their eyes avoiding contact. There was no longer the smugness seen in their statements, but there was also no trace of remorse. The prosecutor read the indictment, which was as long as a dark novel. With each crime, each detail read aloud, the room fell into a heavy silence. Some people covered their faces, not daring to listen further. But Takahashi, sitting in the audience, forced himself to listen. He needed to remember every word, like a vow that he would never forget that girl. When the sentences were announced, the atmosphere in the room seemed to shatter. Hiroshi Miyano, 20 years in prison. Joe Ogura, 8 years in prison. Shinji Minato, 5 years in prison. Yasushi Watanabe, 7 years in prison. That was all. No death penalty, no life imprisonment. The reason? They were all minors at the time of the crime. A murmur of outrage rose throughout the room. A woman burst into tears. Takahashi clenched his hands until they were white. He had once believed that justice, though delayed, would still come. But that day, he realized, there are some shadows so vast that the court can only shine a light on their edges. Leaving the court, he stepped out onto the Tokyo street in autumn, with golden leaves falling at his feet. In his mind, he could still see Junko's face, her bright eyes in the old photograph. And he understood the sentence for those perpetrators may have ended, but the sentence that society has for this memory will never close.